I'll tell you a little story about a customer that we had worked with in the past. This is a large financial customer I was working with, and they had built two separate initiatives. They were working on virtualization, and they had, at the time, about 10,000 servers they were going to virtualize, and it's pretty big. And they had a number of very large, tens of thousands of square foot data centers, and they just built a new data center they were very proud of. And I was working on a virtualization assessment project for some of their executives, and we were looking at everything supporting it, because their initial virtualization initiatives had only looked at server compute resource virtualization, hadn't really been looking deeply at the network, storage, and the physical facilities to support such. And we sort of intervened late on, and they had to do some retrofits to their data center, but ultimately they had built this brand new data center, and they were only able to get probably about 40% occupancy in it. And this is brand new. Was very interested in how that project had gone south, and why they had to spend more money to retrofit that data center, why it wasn't done right the first time. And I think the lesson learned out of that one is a little planning, and you always hear it, a little planning up front will save you a lot on the back end, but in this case it really was true, and all the more so for retrofitting data centers, or certainly building any new data center. It's hard to even spec out 5 years from now. Even it's getting a little bit better, but this was about three years ago. But specking out, how much power density am I going to need in the years to come, but really planning for it's going to be more than I have now. You're not going to get 100% occupancy in any data center. Just the flux and the changes and let that happen. But 40% in a brand new data center, it's a little below their expectations. So I think that was an interesting lesson I learned in coaching them in the direction they needed to take, just with their physical facilities. Is most of my I built a number of data centers, torn a number of data centers down, modified a number of them. My main focus is more in the IT space, so I won't dig real deeply into the physical space. I know there are a lot of vendors, a lot of people here talk about the power and the cooling and the racks, and that's a big part of this show. What are we doing for time? Think we should get started, or wait for a couple more people?
I think that you're good to go.
All right. Well, let's sort of dig into it then. I'll tell you a little bit about Extropy, and get this thing to respond to me. About Extropy and about myself. I've been consulting in various roles for the better part of 20 years now, working with all different clients all over the country and actually all over the world, mostly in the United States though, working with different clients on a wide variety of IT projects, almost everything except for hardcore programming. I've been involved, everything in infrastructure, so you name it, networking, storage, physical data centers. And a few years ago, I'm one of the founding members. We started Extropy because we got a little sick of the big consulting mantras and a lot of the things you'd hear from the large consultancies. And our focus has been to do a few specific things and do them very well. And we've really stayed true to that in networking, storage, virtualization, and of course data centers. And those are areas we've got a lot of experience in. We've really specialized in. I think we've learned a lot of interesting lessons. We've worked with a lot of really large clients, really small clients, and everything in between. And I've been really lucky to work across a number of different verticals or markets, everything from supply chain, manufacturing, healthcare, a lot of service providers. I've built hosting companies. You name it, we've been involved in that type of project. And I think we have a lot of interesting lessons learned. And if you learn the hard way when you're out there in the field consulting and doing the engineering and doing the, getting your hands on. Hey, come on in. Getting hands on with all the technologies and where the gaps are. And I've really seen a fundamental shift over the last, say, 3 or 4 years in how people are talking about it, more about cloud now, but it's really how do you provide virtualization? How do you virtualize your whole data center? That's a topic I presented on this morning, was the virtual data center and some of the more technical aspects of how you go about procuring and building and delivering on that sort of as a business function. You call it service-oriented architecture, you call it cloud, call it whatever you want, but most of the people in this room aren't going to be outsourcing to Amazon EC2 and S3 anytime soon. You're here because you have data centers to run or to build or to transform or to change. And the opportunities and the technologies, the price points come down to where in the last couple of years it doesn't make sense to do anything else but virtualize. And I'm not just talking about virtualizing with VMware and just those platforms. It's a much broader construct. And what I've come across time and time again is that there's certain experience needed, there's certain help that we've provided to our customers, and in past roles and past jobs that I've worked on projects where some of them we came in early and were able to help and get the planning started very early on. Some of them unfortunately we came in a little later in the cycle and weren't able to save them some of those upfront costs, but we came in and set them on the right track, whether it's virtualization or consolidating their data centers. And this is everything from the initial planning with the executives down to operating in transition of data centers and facilities and platforms later on in that whole life cycle process. So that's something we've done a lot of, and I wanted to share some of our methodology, some of our process. You have a little better idea of what we do, and we call these data center solutions or data center services, because these are as a consulting company, very specific things that we do, very specific things that we've focused on, that we've got a lot of great talent, people we've worked with that have done these data center moves many times, find out what works, what doesn't, the implications for security, compliance, all the technical limitations, almost anything you can think of. And so I really want to go down through that. So some of the opportunities, some of the solutions, some of the challenges and problems in doing that. It's not always easy. And then some of the ways we get over those challenges, some of the best practices, and then how we look at executing a plan to fix that. Really, if I go in and talk to an executive, how do we get there from here? I can lay out a plan and whiteboard it or whatever. These are the steps that you need to take. And if any of these steps you don't take, that's where you're going to fall down. That being said, that's a big mouthful. We'll see what we can get through in the next hour. I have Brandy here, one of our directors, with me today, and she's happy to get your information, so am I. We'd like to follow up, if possible, with each and every one of you, whether right after this or down at the booth or later on. Just give us your information, and we'll follow up and talk about a little more. I'm just interested in hearing your stories. That's mostly what I spend my time, just traveling around the country, speaking at conferences, blogging, talking to different companies, and I am still very active in consulting and meeting with customers and trying to understand what they have going on, what some of the solutions are, and maybe sharing a little the insight of the things I've done, but more often than not being educated in the process by the new things that they're encountering. So where's your data center headed? A lot of people have a lot of opinions on the future of data centers, and you'll hear a lot of people talking about cloud and that being something that may or may not replace data centers in the near future. Well, that's not going to, there's certainly still data centers behind it. Amazon EC2 is just a large open source virtualization platform with some fancy APIs in the front, which given are nice, but it's still, there are a number of data centers supporting this. I don't have anybody from Amazon here today, do I? No, I didn't think so. But I think the theme is the same. It's common. It's transformation in the data center space, and by transformation I mean everything from the ground up. The facilities, how you decide what facilities you're going to use, how you're going to leverage the facilities you have, how you pick new facilities, move, consolidate, how you're going to execute on those opportunities, how you're going to evaluate technologies and pick those new solutions, what's right for your business, not necessarily just fitting some vendor's architecture. Talking to CFOs, now they're demanding, they want the short-term and the long-term benefits, and you got to give them both, and you got to do it and save money and not add any headcount at the same time. So that's some of the challenge. And I really like to poise any of the clients that I work with to stage IT to be more of an enabler, because I know for most IT organizations are seen as a cost center, at least to some degree in the business, and not necessarily an enabler. But that's really the goal of any CIO worth his salt. He wants to become a value to the business. He wants to, or he or she want to really lift up the business and offer something extra, enable some new capability, whether it's faster time to market, better quality of experience, better customer support, or just overall better services, better uptime, don't impact revenue as much, whatever the concerns are, not being that traditionally viewed pain for IT, that pain for the business that IT is often